Hey guys, it's me. It's Queen Aset Haru, and I'm here today with another exciting edition of Ask An Aquarius. Okay, so I got a message today, a couple days ago actually, from a woman, and she said that she thought that she had been hexed. She thought she had been cursed. And she wanted me to figure out if that's the case or not. This is something that I've come across a million times. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. Sometimes a person will tell you you have a hex on you so you can pay them to take it off, but there's not really a hex on you in the first place, which is a totally unethical thing that some readers, priests, priestess, people, unethical people will do. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes you do have something on you. So she was asking me, first and foremost, to figure out if it's true or not. And then two, she was asking me about her beliefs. And she said that growing up in the Christian church, she was told that if you did not believe in magic or hexes or things like that, that they cannot affect you. That only what you believe in can affect you. And she asked me if this is true. And I don't know where people get this from, but I have heard it before. I've heard this a number of times from a number of people, and it's recited like it's gospel. But the truth is that it's not true. Just because you don't know about something doesn't mean that it can't affect you. Just because you don't believe in something doesn't mean it can't affect you. I'll give you an example. One day I walked into Pep Boys. Pep Boys in my old neighborhood. I used to have a Jeep. Something was wrong with it, and I went to go address it. I went to go get something from Pep Boys. Well, when I walked in, I instantly got angry at the clerk. Instantly. There was a line in front of me, about 4 or 5 people. Everybody was standing there. I instantly got angry. And the longer I was there, the more other people in front of me and then behind me started to get angry and yell at this clerk. Come to find out, before I walked in, there had been a big blow up with the people in line and the clerk, because the clerk was taking too long, and something about he wanted to go on break and somebody didn't relieve him, and people were cussing him out. Now, me and the people who came in behind me did not know anything about this. We didn't see the fight. We didn't know anything. We just knew that we walked in and got in line. But the energy still affected us. Energy affects you if you know that it's there or not. And that was the point that I tried to make to her about a hex. Just because you don't know or believe in hexes or curses does not mean that they cannot affect you. As a matter of fact, most of the people who've come to me who have actually had a curse or hex on them did not believe in it. Almost all of them didn't believe. Most of them were either Christians or just, didn't have a spiritual system and just thought it was something on TV, Charmed or something, They had no idea that it was real. They never believed in it, and it didn't stop them from being affected when somebody chose to throw juju at them. So when somebody does throw juju at somebody, a lot of times people know that they have juju thrown at them, and they know because of the way that they feel. They just don't feel right. They feel like something's off. Things just don't seem to go right. Some of them have issues with their health. It's usually multiple issues though, and it's like, what is wrong with my life, And they will have multiple issues going on. Some of them even know somebody who might have done this to them. Some of them even know the person. Usually they know the person. All kinds of things like that occur. And like I told her, I was like, I'm not saying that you have a hex or not. That's something that I have to look at your, do your reading and see. And then if you do, it can be taken off. Hexes can easily be taken off. It just depends on what it is, and it comes up in the cards. So, and then you remove, it's just bad energy. It's bad energy that has been pushed towards you and will affect you until it's either taken off or it wears off. And a lot of times, A lot of people, I don't know, because when it comes to it wearing off, the time frames are different. Sometimes it wears itself off. I think it depends on the person who actually cast the magic, if it was a strong person or not. If they're a weak person, it may not last as long. Some people have had juju on them, hexes on them, for years and years and years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Some people get something and then after a year or so, they don't feel anything anymore. I think it depends on the strength of the person that actually did the casting. But just because time goes by doesn't mean it's going to break on its own, even though sometimes it will. So, like I said before, it can be removed. It may even go off. Usually it has to be removed. And somebody takes it off you and you go about your business. It's a very popular scam that they do in Africa. Not all of Africa, but in certain parts, where they'll throw juju at people because they know they're going to have it taken off. So they'll throw juju at somebody and then they have to go to different people to have it taken off. So it's very, very common. It's kind of like walking into a crowd and releasing a biological weapon. And the local hospital releasing a biological weapon because they know you're going to have to come pay them to take care of it. It's the same kind of energy. Somebody purposely throws it so that it then has to be taken off, and then they or whoever in the village is doing this kind of work can be paid for it. So again, it can be taken off, I think, is the most important part. And number two, it can affect you whether you believe or not. So don't think that just because you don't believe in anything, it can't affect you. Just because you don't believe in something doesn't mean it won't affect you. I'm not quite sure. I guess this is something people learned in church, I'm guessing, because I've heard it from several different people and they have quoted it from church. And maybe it's something that people, it gives them comfort to believe that. I'm guessing it's something that gives people comfort, but it's not true. Like I said before, any person I've ever met that has had bad juju on them, most of them never believed. Most of them were introduced to spirituality and magic through having it happen to them. So they never believed in it. They never thought it was real. They thought it was all hocus pocus. They thought it was something on TV. And you have to know, for those of you who watch my videos, there's a difference between magic on TV and real magic. Magic that you see on Charmed or you see on The Craft or things like that, they're based on real magic. So yeah, some of the, the terminology, some of the even gods and goddesses they may call upon, some of the spells may even be real. But a lot of it is enhanced by computers and visualizations and, special effects. So no, the average person is not going to be levitating and flying through the hallway. Could it happen? Possibly. I've seen monks get set on fire and not even move, and I've seen that on television and I've seen that in pictures. So yeah, a lot of spectacular things could happen, but typically it's not like that. So when you see somebody talking about magic, you see somebody talking about these types of energies, don't think about the special effects, think energy. Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who know how to manipulate and use energy. We're talking about people who know how to use herbs and oils and things like that to heal. We're mostly talking about healing and energy. That's what we're talking about. But the thing about it is that, like I said, over the years, a lot of us have forgotten our indigenous spiritual ways. The spiritual ways that I'm talking about are the ways that our ancestors healed themselves and healed each other. This is before the pharmaceutical companies. This is before they had a local hospital. This is how people healed themselves. This is how people took care of themselves and dealt with their emotional issues and their energetic issues. So a lot of us are taken away from our traditions because many of us, we were converted. Our ancestors were converted by the gun, at gunpoint, literally, not because they wanted to, because they had to. So a lot of us are disconnected from these traditions because we grew up with people who were forcefully disconnected. So somebody like me has just taken the time to go back and retrieve our indigenous spiritual practices. So there are a lot of people like me who have gone back and retrieved these things. There's also people whose families hid the knowledge and continue to practice it even though the bullet was put in their face. So some of those people, who've come along, they still have the practices from old days and never had a break in them. So that's basically what we're talking about here. We're talking about our ancestral practices. And many of us, like I said before, are detached from these practices, and we were forcefully given other practices that are foreign to us. And at this point, a lot of people in the world are noticing that some of these spiritual practices are hypocritical, some of them are contrary, and some of them just are not working for people. Some of them are working for people. So really what it is, like I tell people all the time, you have to look at the different spiritual practices. You got to learn them. You have to look at them. You have to research them and see which one fits for you. Just because one fit for your mom or your grandmom doesn't mean it's going to fit for you. Just because something fits for me doesn't mean it's going to fit for you. A friend of mine was telling me how her friend had moved to Costa Rica, which is where I am now. And her friend was saying that she really didn't like it here. It really didn't work for her. But me, on the other hand, I'm amazed by this place. I love it here. So everything isn't for everybody. That's a line I have been telling my students and my clients for 1,000 years. Everything is not for everybody. So when it comes to spirituality, everything isn't going to fit with you. But at least have the common sense to learn about it, to know factually what it is and be able to speak on it. So again, if you think that you've been hexed, the way to figure it out is to talk to somebody who, like me, knows how to do a spiritual reading, knows how to look at your energy. It's not always easy to find somebody who's reputable. I understand that. A lot of people will lie to you. They'll even charge you astronomical amounts of money if something is going on. So I know all of that, but you have to take your time and research and find somebody who really is reputable and will give you a good price on whatever the work is. Like I said before, you typically would need a reading and some type of cleansing, and that type of work it should be affordable. I mean, it shouldn't you shouldn't have to take out a loan on your house to get a cleansing and a reading. Everybody's prices are different, but like a reading, my readings are $65 for an hour. Removing like something like that really depends on how hard it is to get off you. Most spells start at $75 and they can go all the way up to $300 depending upon how much work is done. And some other people may charge more than that or less than that. So you have to look and shop around. There are no set prices on this kind of thing. So it's basically how much does the person want to charge you to do the work, and how much are you willing to pay to do the work. So you want a reputable person, you want a good person, but you also want to pay a good price. If somebody's reputable and they're really good at what they do, but they want $3,000 for a reading and $6,000 for a cleansing, you really need to reconsider that energy, So that's basically what it's about, is just finding somebody that can really help you and somebody that's not going to lie to you. That's a big part of it. But don't think for a minute because you don't believe in something that it cannot affect you. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. When I walked in the Pep Boys that day, I didn't believe in whatever was going on. I didn't even know. I didn't know what was going on. I just walked in and was suddenly angry. Energy affects us regardless of if we believe in it or if we know it's there or not, But when something is going on with you, if you have a hex or a curse, you might not know like all the particulars because it might not be part of your, radar, but something is wrong because you don't feel right. Your life is not going right. It's like things are off. I'm gonna give you some examples of some things that will happen. Depression, anxiety, panic attacks out of nowhere. Like you've been fine all your life and out of nowhere it just happens. Prolonged illnesses that can't really be explained. Infestations that come out of nowhere. Animals and children reacting weirdly to you, crying, screaming, things like that. What else can happen? I mentioned illnesses of different kinds, fatigue, throwing up, weight loss, things along those lines. Problems with your prosperity, losing money, things happening with your getting fired, accidents all the time, falling, car accidents, things like that. If you have a lot of these kind of things going on, and you never had this going on before, and out of nowhere multiple things like this start happening to you, then that's a pretty good sign that somebody might have done something like that. Because typically the average person, your life just doesn't fall apart out of nowhere for nothing. Now, it also could be your own karma. It could be that you've done a lot of things to people and it's starting to come back to you. That's another thing. Sometimes it's hard to tell between karma and hex. But basically, if you haven't harmed nobody and all of a sudden, all hell just breaks loose, then you have to question what is going on. And if it is your karma, the best thing to do is to just clean it up by correcting what you've done wrong, apologizing if you can, changing around from negative to positive, doing positive things for people, helping people out. So the first thing you have to figure out is, what is it? Is it a hex? Is it karma? Is it mental health? What is it? And if it is a hex, if it is a curse, if it is bad juju, then you have to go to somebody and have them look at you and remove it. Okay, and that's really the bottom line. It's kind of scary. It's very negative, the kind of person that would do something like this. And I know people who would do things like this, and you probably do too. You're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, people don't do stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I know a lot of people, because in my tradition, I'm a priestess of Mayat. In our tradition, one of our vows is not to hurt people. So no matter how angry somebody gets me, I cannot hurt them through magic. I can punch them in their face, but I cannot lift my hand to throw juju, or that's the end of me. That's the end of my ability. That's the end of that's a break in my vow. And if I break my vows, then I'm not killed, but I'm just tossed. Spirit is not going to believe my word anymore, and it's over. And I understand that and promise that from day one. From the day I started to do magic, I promised not to harm people. But I am a priestess of Mayat. That is our vow. We believe in truth and justice and things along those lines. I've seen people online arguing the exact opposite, arguing that it was that you have to do dark to do light. No, you don't. I've heard people say all kinds of weird stuff like that. And a lot of those people that say those kind of things are people that do those kind of things. I know somebody right now sitting in the middle of North Philly casting the spells on her next door neighbor because she's jealous of her next door neighbor. And I told her, that's going to come back to you. And you would never think. She's not a spiritual looking person. She doesn't walk around with dreadlocks and, crystals in her hands. You would never know that. She's just a regular chick, You would never know. Most of the people I know that do stuff like that, or I've come across that do stuff like that, you would never know that they do stuff like that because they keep it under their hat unless they know somebody who is into it as well. And then they'll be like, yeah, me too, And like I said, there's a difference between light magic and dark magic. Light magic, dark magic, and gray magic is how I classify them. Light magic is when you do magic to help people, when you do magic to heal people, when you do love work, when you do work to like readings and things like that, removing bad hexes, protection spells, stuff like that. Gray magic is when you'll do both. You have no differentiation between the two. You'll do good stuff and you'll do bad stuff. Dark magic is people who typically do negative things. They typically do damnation spells. They typically do spells to attack your prosperity. I've had people do spells on me to try to make me sick. I've had all kinds of stuff like that come at me, and I've seen other people. So there's dark workers. I call them dark workers, and they do dark things to people, and they don't care. They don't care. If they get the inclination, if you hurt them, if you harm them, if they just don't like you, if they're jealous of you, whatever, I believe that this energy comes back in their karma because almost all of them have screwed up lives. I've never met a happy dark worker. I've never met a dark worker that was in a happy space, in a positive space, in a forgiving, open-hearted space. I've never met one of those. Not to say there aren't one, but I've never met one, and I really would doubt it. Because just by definition, the magic that you're doing is negative. How you going to win when you ain't right within? You can't. Let's just keep it real. You can't. I don't understand how you would even think you could. So, there are people that do stuff like that, and there's more people than you probably think. I know a lot of people. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I mean, average Joes just online, or people who just come to me for work, or people who come to me and say, hey, I've been, working a spell on this person and it's not working. Can you help me? And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Oh, well, I'm trying to make them lose their money. Or this young lady is seeing my ex-boyfriend. I'm trying to break them up. And I'm looking like, aren't you a security guard? Like, where did you learn this at? And I go, oh, my family's this or that, this tradition, that tradition, and I just picked it up along the way. And I'm like, so you're trying to break them up because you want him back? Things like that to me are dark. Things like that to me are negative. Trying to break people up, trying to take people's prosperity, trying to hurt people, things like that. So people do those things, and unfortunately some of us will be victims of that. And what you do is you either put up protection magic, which I'll do a video on protection magic one day. You do protection magic, or if something has already happened, you have to have it removed, that kind of thing. So that's my 2 cents on hexes and curses and things like that and how they affect you. Now, I will do more on this topic because this topic is multifaceted. So I'm going to have to touch on different areas of it. But for now, just know that just because you don't believe something doesn't mean it can't affect you. It can affect you, but there also are ways to protect yourself. And in my next video, I'll talk about protection magic. Take care.